Hey, founders, welcome to another week of the TF Labs Founder Roundtable, where we get together and just talk about things and learn from each other, give each other advice around a particular topic. This week's topic is going to be around B2B sales. We've had previous topics around startup law and marketing and finance. So with that, I'd want to introduce Curtis Friesen, who is actually my best friend since we were 14 years old. So it's kind of fun to be, and we've worked together on many occasions. So with that, I'll let him take it from here.
Yeah, we have worked together quite a bit. So I forget about that.
We need to know what Baby Blanco was like.
Oh, I have some stories. Let me tell you. How many?
That's for offline. Remember, we are recording.
Yeah. Jonathan, how many vehicle collisions have you and I been in together?
2.5.
Yeah.
Two and one, like right after I got out of the car, you got into one.
Anyway, unlike the email Jonathan sent a few minutes ago, I'm not a fractional CFO, and I will not be discussing your financial models and how to determine pricing and hiring plans. But we're gonna. I've been in B2B sales and B2C sales, but more recently B2B sales for probably the last 15 years, and in the last 10 years in the data center industry, mostly on the media side, and then about 6 months ago, I transitioned over to the vendor side, and now I work for a company called TAS Energy that is based out of Houston, Texas, which is a large-scale modular solutions company, and I'm the director of edge and modular data center products. But that basically means that I play golf and buy drinks for people. So.
Nice. Well, we're excited to get those golf tips as we move along in the conversation. So as you all know, the goal here is just to have a mutual conversation. I'll kind of help kick us off, but feel free to ask each other questions and chime in. So I guess with that is, what do you all think of, when you hear B2B sales? Who here is doing B2B sales? What's kind of like the good and the bad of it?
Are you asking everyone, or are you asking
everybody, whoever wants to chime in?
Oh,
I think the good is the.
Yeah.
I think the good is like larger checks. The bad is slower sales cycle.
Yeah, right. Like when you're doing a B2B sale, it's likely going to be a slower sales cycle because there's multiple decision makers involved. You got to prove it out, etc. But yes, a larger check for what's going on there.
I think one major difference that I've noticed in my experience on both sides is B2B has a much more logic-based approach rather than an emotional-based transaction. A B2C transaction, it really you are tugging at the consumer's emotions sometimes, whether you're dealing with selling a timeshare or even selling a vehicle to a family. In B2B, that person's likely not spending their own money. So there's a little bit even more of a logical responsibility behind the transaction, and it's really you're providing a service rather than a product often too. So there's a little bit different approach to that, I think. And I agree, Alex. There are much longer sales cycles in a B2B transaction. Sometimes
that's a very. Sorry, go ahead, Lizzie.
No. I was just wanted to kind of reiterate on the point of what you said, Curtis, about the emotional approach versus the logical approach. And in what I sell, I'm targeting sporting arenas, and I'm B2B to C, so it's kind of both, right? But I have found that selling on emotions gets you nowhere. And not nowhere, but for my product, it's hard for them to catch on. The emotional side, I really have to drive in on the service, but also the, how our product will generate them revenue, and then kind of go into the emotional approach. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I would add, actually, this is a very interesting way how, Curtis, you put it. I've been involved in B2B all my life, and it's more recently got into, say, with like last 3 to 5 years, B2B to C. But I've always looked at the B2B sales in your, how you said it, logical, but also very relationship based. You're kind of building that relationship for a while before it gets to that transaction. And then now you have some sort of an emotional relationship connection with the actual buyer. May not be with the actual user, but definitely with the buyer. But on the B2C side, even though it is an emotional based and very transactional, you could make that, to Lizzie's point, you could make that quick connect, but then you may not see the follow on or the retention over a period of time. So the dichotomy between emotional, logical versus very transactional and long-term relationship based, I think a lot of the folks who actually come from B2C to B2B or the other way, that's one of the things that it takes them a little while to kind of grok it. Traditional B2B sales models, from my perspective, having sold security and other kinds of stuff, it takes 9 months to a year, could take that long. Some of these HR and solutions that I've been recently involved with, the sales cycles, even I found, is more like 3 to 4 months. It still will be a quarter, but given some of the time things it could, the SaaS has enabled people to do quicker POCs and understand the value. So they may be reducing that tiny little bit, but longer cycles for sure, and definitely too many stakeholders involved. That's been my observation. Just wanted to add that I find that very interesting how you put it, emotional, logical. In my mind, it was like relationship, transactional. Thank you for sharing that.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
I totally agree. Go ahead, Lizzie.
Sorry. On the point of where you said the SaaS model and proof of concepts, do you think that, like I found that when we offer, a proof of concept, it does accelerate the sales cycle a bit more, but do you think that the right approach is to go like the proof of concept model immediately, or just kind of give a feel and see what they're thinking?
I've seen both of those approaches work. Depends on what their needs are. If you've been able to ascertain those needs, this is where ascertaining the needs is what sales job is, to kind of really understand that. Are they a qualified lead or not? Mm-hmm. If they've gone through the qualification rigor and there is a need, getting them quickly to really, for lack of a better word, taste what they're going to actually get served, mm-hmm. is much more fulfilling and appealing to them, because now they can really, whatever you claimed in your slide deck or pitch, they can now feel it and see it and say, okay, this is going to work or not. More questions during a POC means you're discovering what they're really looking for. Got it. As an early stage or a startup, it's actually good to find out, are they going to ask for things that are not on your roadmap for next 12, 18 months? And if so, walk rather run away, because one customer might take you down a path that's not strategically relevant to your product line.
Got it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And, one thing I'd like to add on that too is if you're in a startup or you're building a product or you have this idea, it's easy to think that like, my idea is awesome. I love it. It's already packaged. I want someone to use this exactly how this product works. When in reality, with most B2B sales, especially at the early days, you're molding or modifying your product a little bit for them, right? You might even be acting almost like a service business to them that just happens to be able to leverage the product behind you. Like, to go along with Niraj's analogy of like, what you're feeding them. It's like, hey, you're selling ice cream and you think your customer wants ice cream, but they don't want ice cream. They want a sundae, right? Like, they want multiple flavors. They want the banana, they want the cherry on top. So it's like, how do you start, molding or slowly feeding that to them in a way that they get value and it doesn't disrupt your roadmap like Niraj was talking about.
No, you guys, what is a qualified lead? Sorry, that's a dumb question.
Qualified lead, Curtis.
What is qualifying a lead? Well, I think, just fundamentally, it's, good, again, piggybacking what Niraj was saying, making sure that you're not chasing something that's not going to be beneficial. And somebody, let's say, for example, I'll come across a lead from a company that might be one of my competitors. And if I just straight up call or email without doing any type of due diligence behind why that individual or that company might be looking at some of my products or services, I'm wasting everybody's time, right? So it's really about due diligence, Alex. It's just making sure that you understand the context of the where the lead came from.
Of that engagement.
And figuring out if what they need or want aligns with what you give, so you don't waste anyone's time.
Yeah. That reminds me, I actually get hit up all the time via LinkedIn and email and phone calls because my contact information is pretty readily available. And it's actually pretty frustrating when you're getting contacted time and time again, sometimes 6-7 times in a month by the same person. And they haven't taken the time to understand what I actually do and what my company does and how I have zero interest in whatever their product or service is, right? Because they never qualified me as a lead.
So it's not like intent to purchase, it's basically that you're speaking with the correct person at a company that would possibly be interested.
Yeah, that absolutely, that's part of it too.
And what
if I may,
like qualifying questions, like once you're on the phone with a prospect in B2B, like what are your go-to questions to figure out if they are a qualified lead for you?
You're asking me?
Or anybody.
Anybody.
Yeah, so the great points. I think from a qualified lead standpoint, every organization should know exactly the segment you're going to play in. If you're not going to target companies that are 1,000 people and more, don't reach out to companies that are 1,000 people and more. So from your target market, target vertical, target segments, to then looking at potential personas that you must be targeting to make that sale. Some of the target, and depending on the industry vertical that you're in, currently where I'm at, where we're playing, we're looking for CFOs, HR directors, VP of HRs, so very specific in companies that have 100 to 500 people 500 people employees, right? So very targeted. So any lead coming to us or any lead that we reach out to, we want to make sure that we are doing that target. Anyone outside of that is going to be not suitable for us to actually chase. So it goes back to Curtis and Lizzie's point about wasting anyone's cycle. Some of the questions you could ask, depending on the offering you have, is identifying the true need that they have. So for example, if you are in recruiting, do they recruit? Are they recruiting right now? What kind of people do they really recruit for? If all the time this company is just recruiting for people 5 years plus experience and your portfolio offers people from 2 to 5 years, then you shouldn't be reaching out to them because they're really not going to spend too much time on you. So qualifying questions could be mapping your offering, as Lizzie pointed out, to their need, understanding and getting to the right person. If you're talking to a role that is CEO or CFO that does not on a day-to-day basis manage hiring, they're not the right role to be speaking with. You probably want to get with somebody who's in HR or at least in a hiring manager, director of something who's going to hire people like that, right? The other way to think about is, are they the actual budget person or not? So in HR, sometimes the person you're speaking with may not be the actual signatory or the contract person, right? They may be dependent on the HR person's recommendation, as a CFO might be the actual person. So you want to make sure you quickly identify who are the people involved, roles involved in eventually getting you to that check. So rightful need, rightful person, finding the person who's actually going to sign the check, and questions according to that. Sorry, I don't want to take too much. I'm sure plenty of people have other comments to say, so I'll shut up here.
Definitely say, like in recruiting, I called companies every day. So we would cold call companies. When I built my book of clients, I cold called 50 companies a day. And you try everything. You call HR, you call the CFO, you call whoever. The easiest way in that we found is call the person in pain first, and pain meaning who is the team manager that actually has the open seat right now, or who is the manager of that team that needs another tool to manage the team better? Like who's actually feeling the pain of not having your solution? But then they're oftentimes not the decision maker. So sometimes you start working with the person in pain, and you get traction, and they talk to you, and you get responses, and everything looks great. But then when it comes to the check, who actually cuts the check, right? So those are two people to identify early on. It's like who's in pain. That's how you get in. That's how you break in. But then you have to really, to Niraj's point, you have to figure out who's actually the decision maker, who can sign the check for your.
And that's really how you start creating like that champion, right? So that person in pain, you turn them into your champion in the organization, offering them that solution. There's a couple of interesting stories or companies that have done things like that. So everybody's familiar here with Dropbox. So like when Dropbox first started, they're very much kind of more a consumer type product. And then they started noticing that there were email addresses of like big companies in their client base. So like, Nick at facebook.com or whatever, all these big companies. And so then they kind of use that approach to be able to get the B2B, client, right? And say like, hey, like, well, you have people in your organization using Dropbox already. Like, why don't you have them use it in your org and things like that? So
Alex, another great way to qualify leads or even generate leads for yourself at the same time is just through media publications that are relevant to your industry, right? I recently had a good example of this and some pretty good success. I was reading a publication from the Building Congress and Exchange of Baltimore, which that doesn't really matter which chapter it's from.
Is that where you live?
There was a gentleman from DPR Construction who was quoted about talking about how they're utilizing prefabrication more often in their construction process, and that's exactly what my company does is modular prefab construction. And so I looked him up on LinkedIn, and I was able to track down his email address, and I just sent him a quick, concise note that essentially was like, hey, I understand that DPR is looking to expand their use of prefabrication. Perhaps TAS could be of assistance here. Let me know if you want to chat. And he got back to me right away, and now we're doing business together. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Along with that,
be overly complicated.
Yeah, right. Like, so, if you, and that can be difficult though, if you're a startup, right? Maybe you don't have either the know-how of like where to fit in, or maybe there's a cost that you might be afraid of. I think, I do this a lot, and I know Nick does this a lot, is that, as a startup, you have this responsibility to essentially be your own media company at the same time, and, create your own content, because that content now becomes little nuggets of proof that your customers will see when you go after them, right? Like, it's a lot easier to go after a big client if they at least have a point of reference. They don't even necessarily need to have ever watched a video that you've ever done, period, but just the fact that you can actually guide them to that and say, hey, I did this video on this one subject a while ago that touches on this. I'd love if you take a look. You're giving them those pieces of information. And it doesn't, a lot of times people start to worry about like, well, I only have 10 views or 20 views or 15 views on that video. And it doesn't matter, to be honest, on how many views you have, as long as you're consistent with it. That's what I found, at least, right? Is they know that you're consistently educating yourself and educating others. And that's what they want to see. Nick, I'd love if you chimed in too.
Yeah, we honestly, we did a lot of these tactics: hard outbound, emailing, cold calling, 6 to 8 touches in the first couple of years of our company. And for one, we burned a lot of our brand within that space. But for two, the comment that just kept coming back, especially as a startup, was like, who the fuck is this kid? Like, what is he doing? What is this company? You're not a big player. And then, I've talked about this on before. Everybody started telling me, well, you have to go to conferences and you have to pay $5,000 a booth and you got to do it for 3 years and then you'll build your reputation. And we did that and we got 0 leads. So then, kind of looking psychologically for us, what we said was, look, we need to have 2 things. We need to have you trust our product, that it's actually going to do what it needs to do for you. And you have to trust me, which, technically the third is your company, right? Like if we were at a big company in the sales cycle, you'd have to trust me as a salesperson that I'm giving you the right information, but also you trust our company. To be honest, Nick is Squad, Squad is Nick, right? Like you're trusting me more than our logo. So what we said is, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to like build our reputation in the sports sponsorship industry and not sell our product. How can we do that? Well, we see the world a little bit differently. We think that sponsorship is not digital enough. We think it's going to bite a lot of teams in the ass and they're going to lose a lot of money. So what we did was, it started with an article a day. I, for 4 months, wrote an article a day about how I thought sports sponsorship was broken. And we started getting some traction. And then I created the podcast with one of our clients, and it really started getting traction. And then, we started doing a tip of the week, and that really started getting traction. Within that timeline, we stopped doing outbound and our inbounds just flooded in because people honestly didn't really care what our product did when they reached out. They just knew that this guy is solving problems in our space. And I know we have to get digital because brands are dropping us for Facebook ads. So we started getting inbounds and, we started working with other teams. And then, we really started killing it with them and our referrals kicked up. So to kind of break down our leads, 60% come from LinkedIn content, 22% come from referrals, and almost 0 come from outbound, just because I stopped outbounding because it was working so well. The crazy thing now is, though, we have a head of sales, and this guy's a hard outbounder. He's going to hit you up. When he gets on the phone with people basically say, oh yeah, I follow Nick all the time. Thanks for reaching out. I was kind of just waiting for you all to reach out. In the conversation, he's starting at a 9 instead of starting at a 2. So not to say he's not a great salesperson, but our sales cycle was 7 months. Our sales cycle now is 10 days. Like literally, hey, you have a sponsor who needs couponing. Here's scratchers. Here's a demo. Okay, cool. Let's sign on the dotted line. And a lot of that is because people have watched our content and they trust me that when I say scratchers is going to help close this client, which is their need, and get you more money. And then on the flip side of that, it's like, I have to get you to trust me to put you in front of a sponsor who has your trust. If my product messes that up. So I think, that's the other big thing that we were hitting is we were saying, hey, do this scratching when it's going to, the stats say it's going to get you a lot of revenue, closes, great results with your clients or your sponsors. I had to build that trust that you were actually going to trust, a 20-something kid that, you're 45 and been in this business for 30 years. What are you talking about? So I think we hit a wall so hard. I mean, honestly, we'd never did more than 20K in revenue in our first 2 years per year. And that was with hard outbounding. We switched this about 2 years ago to LinkedIn content. It was crazy slow. We started just trickling it in. But now, I mean, even pre getting this guy for outbounds, we just started taking off. And, if I had to do it all over again, while my product was being built, I would spend this for 6 months and I would just, everything that I thought was broken on my industry, I would create content with it, put it on LinkedIn or wherever your prospects are. And again, they start coming to us, which when we talk about qualified leads, when somebody inbounds and says, I have a Burger King and they do couponing, I get on the phone and say, okay, cool. Here's our 3 activations. Go show them to the sponsor, see which one picks it. As opposed to, calling somebody up, hey, what do you need? What sponsors do you need? Do you do digital? So obviously that inbound helps, but even in the outbound now, I mean, we target, if we've killed it with a bank partner and you have that bank partner, That outbound is just, hey, these 4 teams have increased their sponsorship revenue with that bank partner just by implementing this activation. Let's get on the phone. So I think, I mean, again, every B2B, every industry is different, but the number one thing we've done is that content has taken my sales cycle to like a 10-day sales cycle, and I'm just flabbergasted to the point where we got so busy, I stopped putting out content. And literally the rest of today is like, I went from putting out 3 articles a week to 1 article a week. That's our number one lead driver. What am I doing? Like, I need to stop doing everything else. So again, I think it matters for your company and all that, but I think for us, when we created this plan, number one thing we thought about was, why are you going to trust me as a startup and a salesperson to be able to solve your problems? Because your reputation at your job is on the line. Because if this program messes up, you can fire me, but guess what? You're going to hear about it, you know, for years after that of, we're never doing an idea for you again. You know, that obviously that's not every kind of customer's culture in their business. But the second thing is, you know, getting that trust in me that I'm going to help you. And then obviously trusting my product after you start working with it, so that you're going to other teams and saying, hey, if you're not using this, you're losing out. So sorry, that was a very long rant to say, like, we went about the path a little bit different. And again, it works for us. It's working for us, knock on wood, that it continues to work for us. But I think that's the biggest thing that I think about is, why are you going to trust me with your sponsor that my product's going to help it? And if I, you know, make sure that we build that trust, if we don't do anything to kind of lose that trust in the process.
So Nick, it sounds like, and I was going to ask you this initially, it sounds like really the main reason behind your sales director's immediate results and success is that he or she is simply just harvesting a lot of the seeds that you've already planted, right?
You know, and I love that, right? Like, as a CEO, I'm like, thank God you don't have to go through 7-month sales cycles and question yourself as a salesperson. But on the flip side, it's not all me. I mean, I think what I'm doing is, you know, I'm watching, I used to play football. I'm watching enough film to let you know that when this lineman twitches one way, it's going to be a run play, right? I'm setting you up so you know exactly what play is coming at you. But yes, I mean, he actually pure commission sold for us for 2 months before the pandemic, and he couldn't close, you know, a single deal. And to be honest, at that time, we backed off a lot of our content, because I was sitting here as somebody in sports, when sports is being shut down, saying, how do I get all my clients to keep paying me money and keep the lights on? So I think it massively helps him. And if he was on this call, he would tell you, hey, there's about 3 every 5 calls that I get on, the comment comes up, oh yeah, I know Nick in Squad. I see the content all the time. I didn't know you had a scratch and win. I'd never ventured to your website. This is awesome. So I think, not to downplay his salesmanship, he's a great salesperson, but I think what I've done is just teed him up to succeed and again, lower his sales cycle, which brings him more money, brings us more money, and keeps him motivated, right, to keep working with us because he's getting wins. And as a salesperson, it's hard to stay motivated when you lose a lot, right? It's like that one deal comes in and you're like, okay, this isn't that bad. Let's keep going. So I think it just it's teed him up to really be successful. And hopefully a little bit more successful than he would have been if we would have just been silent and purely outbound.
It sounds
really also reemphasizes what Niraj was saying earlier about the relationship-based aspect behind B2B transactions, right? And that relationship really is, you know, oh, I know Nick, or I follow Nick, and that really is the main reason behind what my transition from the media side to the vendor side is, after spending almost a decade as kind of the middleman between the owner operator and the hardware vendors and the end users, and building and cultivating a pretty big network in a pretty niche industry that is the data center industry. The company I work for now, you know, they've been doing a lot of data center work for the last 4, 5, 6 years, but it's all NDA for a bunch of big hyperscalers, and nobody can ever talk about it. Nobody knows some of the stuff we've been doing. So they were like, look, let's bring Curtis in. He knows everybody in the industry. And put out a press release that now he's joined our team. And really from day one, you know, the entire industry is now focused on TAS Energy and wondering why did Curtis go over there? Maybe we need to check it out, right?
And the interesting thing on that though is when I started in this business, I was only sports sponsorship and I only had contacts in minor league teams. So I was coming in fresh, right? Like I had no background. I had no book of sale. Like I had no clients that I could go to. And this was my way to almost build that client base. So like that content massively helped me to where, I mean, like, I won't say which team, and this person doesn't remember it, but a head of sponsorship, when I called 3 years ago before we started doing this, literally said, "Who are you? Like, why would I buy this from you? I don't know who you are." 2 years later, they're one of our biggest revenue clients. And the way we got him is because he saw a video on LinkedIn, ventured over to our website and inbounded. So that person literally does not know it to this day that when I first called him, he had no idea who I was. And he literally told me, like, "Why am I paying attention to you?" And this allowed me, without being in the industry for years and years and years, to just be like, okay, cool, I can build my reputation to where, you know, my goal for the company and for me is just like, when you think of sports sponsorship, you think of Nick and Squad. And, you know, obviously we can build a ton of products off of that for years and years and years, but that's kind of why we did it. We just had to do it out of necessity. And honestly, I didn't think it would work.
We've all heard that. We've all
Jonathan, that's something that you do pretty well too, is building your personal brand behind a lot of the TF Labs ventures, but I think it really does come down to building a personal brand, and that, you know, putting out content that is showing up. That's half the battle, is just showing up to things, and, you know, we haven't do that in the last 6 to 9 months. It's virtually, right, and that still counts.
And one last thing,
start opening up again. Show up as much as possible.
One last thing I'll say about the content is, like, it has to be for your customer. Like literally, I get messages of, "Nick, why are you telling everybody to do this? You should set up a consulting thing to where couponing partners, if they have a problem." And it's a long-term play. I'm telling you that your team should set up a pre-game, what is it, the home shopping network thing, and I'm showing you on Facebook how to do it for free, because I'm hoping that a couple of years down the line, I made you money then and you'll come back to me. So I think sometimes when I see people try to do kind of that play, either they promote the hell out of their product, or they kind of don't give a ton of value out there. That's really going to lead to dollars. And I think honestly, when I started, I used to do that, and it sucked.
Well, we've all heard the saying, right? Like, it's, you know, it's all who you know, it's all who you know, it's all who you know. And it's really the opposite of that. It's all who knows you. It doesn't matter who you know, it's who knows you. And so, you know, part of the psychology I like to use when it comes to a personal brand is, if you think about influencers, and I'm talking about like the mega influencers, like your Kylie Jenners of the world, you know, the reason why people like to follow them is they feel like they know them, right? Like they feel like they know Kylie Jenner. And so I'm not saying that, you know, you have to be to that level, of course, but for Nick to tell his story, or Curtis to network, or, you know, like what I do, where I'll provide different levels of content, you know, people start to feel like they get to know you. And so that way, when they're having a conversation with you, you're kicking that conversation off from that knowledge base that they have of you, right? Like they've already gotten to know you through the content that you've created. And that's why that becomes so important and so crucial.
It seems like that's important in both B2C and B2B.
It's for B2B, 100%. B2C, I mean, really just everything.
And I'm trying to get analytic on it. I'm like, literally, there's a sliding scale to where I'm starting to weight clients based on, I know, okay, if you liked my video, like, you're at a 2. If you liked it for a second week, you're at a 4, right? So like we're even getting to the point, because what's happening is my sales guy is like, "Hey, I'm about to reach out to this person. I'm like, oh, no, don't reach out to that person. There's this person in sponsorship who's higher, and that person opens every newsletter that we do and watches every video. That's who you need to reach out to. I don't have the time right now to kind of like fully flesh that out, but that's the dream. The dream is like on a scale of I don't know who you are to I'm full blown. Yeah, like I'm following your content, I'm commenting and all that. Like I'm trying to get a sliding scale so that when we do reach out, like I'm not reaching out to the person who doesn't know us. I'm reaching out to the person who I'm 2 emails, 3 phone calls away from closing that deal.
So is it ever too early to reach out? So like, for example, like we're building, as I said, like basically a carbon negative asset backed cryptocurrency. But we're actually doing like a marketplace play, sort of like Airbnb, where we're engaging individuals and businesses. But the businesses we're going to be engaging, or we are engaging, are like large tech companies. So we're looking at like specifically CSOs or directors of sustainability at like Apple, like really large companies.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
So have you not reached out to anyone yet in regards to what you're building?
No, not really. I mean, we've been putting out content for 23 months. We finally got our blockchain up and running. It's live. It's carbon negative. It's pretty
nice. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Okay.
I would suggest, coming from the crypto industry, that you focus on community, because without a community, you have no network. And if you're trying to solve a network problem without a community, you don't have a product, because the product is the community. And so if you're not focusing on your product, which is your community, then you don't have a product. And who cares if you have technology? Because anyone can copy and paste technology from any other forum. So focus on the community. That's what you need to be doing. You have a great product. Carbon neutral is gonna be everything. So it's an inverse of the carbon asset?
Yeah.
Dude, that's super smart.
Yeah.
Reach out.
That's a great point, Jonathan. That is a great point. I hear that a lot from investors where, you know, it comes down to it. Yeah, a lot of people, you can have a patent, whatever, but a lot of people can copy what you're doing, but you can't copy community.
Nope.
So how do you start building community? Do you guys have a lot of experience starting building?
Partnerships, community outreach, involvement.
Jonathan's doing it right now. What we're doing, this is community.
Yep. Yeah, Jonathan's a great example.
I think what we did in our community is we went on LinkedIn and we connected with every single sponsorship person in the sports industry. About 40% will say yes at first. You don't reach out and say, hey, I'm building blah, blah, blah. You just connect and then you just put out content, and the people who listen will listen. And literally on Sunday nights, I just sit there. You get about 100 a day connection requests if you don't pay for more, which we don't pay for more. And you just kind of go through and click. You'll get about 40% of the people to say yes, as long as you don't spam them. You're probably in the top echelon when they say yes to your connection request if you do not spam them, because that's the common tactic on LinkedIn today, is to connection request, reach out, and it's outplayed, it's overplayed, and then just put out content.
With that, I mean, you bring up an excellent point. I think LinkedIn's extremely overplayed, and not necessarily a great place, at least in the crypto industry, to get qualifying leads. At this point, Twitter seems to be the best place. And so really, like a generalist place to get leads, I don't know if that's necessarily the best approach, because really you should be analyzing your own business structure. Maybe Nick, maybe that works for you, maybe that works for your industry sector, but Lisa, you know, maybe she needs to be on Twitter, maybe she needs to be on Pinterest, you know, and so that's kind of like that's how I would approach it. The reason why I'm on Twitter and the reason why I'm on Discord is my community is on Discord and my community is on Twitter. And so I'm with my community, and that's why I have a product.
100% agree. I would say find your platform. LinkedIn's ours. We tried Facebook, tried Twitter, tried all these other ones. They didn't work as well as LinkedIn, so we doubled down. So yeah, I'd agree.
What was Lisa saying?
I feel like what your product is, it has a mission, right? And I think when you have a mission, like my mission is going to be, I want to get more people into cyber because we have a workforce shortage. So I'm hammering that. That's my plan. And I think for you have an emotional aspect to it, I think. So there's this article, I can send it to you. It's called My Startup is a Movement, or Your Startup is a Movement. And it talks about, really creating content around the mission that you're on, and just really being, having some media publications, etc. around that. I think that might be good for you to find where your audience even sits. I know I've met a lot of people in the sustainability space. I can probably even connect you someone at Google within that space. They're very passionate. It's an emotional thing, right? So for you, you have to build an emotional community around that. So I think, you just gotta find your audience there.
Yeah, you need a salesperson, Alex. That's what you need. You need someone who can understand your emotional, like, you're convicted into your product. That's why you've designed it well. So you need to find someone that's able to pick up, all the intricacies of what you've created and be able to convey that to your customer base.
So I guess I don't know. I feel like I asked this question and didn't get an answer. Is it ever too early to reach out to someone on LinkedIn if I'm connected with like someone at Google, like the CSO at Google?
So it depends what your intentions are, is the best way I would put it. So kind of piggybacking around what like Nick said when you reach out. So I like the easiest way I think to do this analogy is in a dating world, right? If you met someone and you wanted to date them, you wouldn't say, hey, nice to meet you, I would like to marry you right now, right? Like you would never, even if you for some reason felt that way, you would never say that, because you would come across as a crazy person, right? So the same thing is that you might meet someone, you're not going to be like, hey, nice to meet you, I want you to use my product, here's like sign on this signature. So it's really all about like building, like, do you really in fact care about building that relationship? And if you come at it from that angle, who knows, maybe you just never do a business deal for this company with that person, but you're going to have other businesses later. You're going to do other things later. You're building that foundation down for when, that business opportunity arises. So I would say it's never too early to reach out to someone if you can add some sort of value to it. But it is definitely too early to reach out to people, like to sell them something, if the relationship hasn't necessarily been built there. Well, everybody, we're pretty much at time. I'd love to leave it open to anybody if they have like a last question or comment or something they want to go down with.
All-time high.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is that useful?
Don't ever buy it. It's a waste of your
time. Do not buy it.
Okay.
Buy Zoom info before you buy that.
I have a friend who works at LinkedIn, and every time we talk, I tell him how worthless that product is.
They gave me a free month just last night. So
that's how they try to get you in.
Yeah, I'm not.
I mean, use it, but no, it's not worth the.
Yeah, cancel after the month.
Does anyone have a Zoom info account?
I expense it through my company.
Does it provide?
Otherwise, I wouldn't pay for it myself.
Okay.
If I had to, but
it's really good to get in touch with people is utilizing sliding into the DMs and sending videos like on Instagram or Twitter. People really, I do it all the time. People love that shit. I'm just saying.
Yeah, dude, slide into the DMs on Twitter. It's better than LinkedIn.
It is. But Jonathan, to your point, I slide into the DMs on LinkedIn and send a video, and that works way better than just the BS. Hi, my name is Lizzie. Buy my product.
Right.
If you need something visual to engage with.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably because it's actually done by a person rather than their little like.
Yeah, it's the Gary Vee approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of the use cases we want to handle with hire streams, by the way, is just having that sales aspect of the video preemptively. So
easy peasy.
Yep. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us for the Founder Roundtable. I hope you are enjoying it as much as I do. It's great for me. I love to do it myself. So I hope you guys, it sounds like you guys are all the same. Feel free to invite others. The only requirement is that someone's working on their company in a full-time capacity and it's a tech type product, right? Just so that way we're all aligned on the call. We'll have the same type of, problems, etc. Upcoming founder roundtable. So next week it's going to be just like managing the holidays as a founder. Like, what is that like, right? When, you know, maybe you have parents that tell you that you need to have a real job or whatever. Actually, my dad says that to me quite often. He's like, when are you going to get a real job? Like, this is my real job.
My dad,
Story of my life.
Yeah.
my dad still can't figure out how we're gonna make money.
Oh, my dad loves to tell me you should do this and this and that to make money. I'm like, you have your own damn business. Goodbye.
So we'll be talking about that next week, and that's Christmas Eve. So if people can't make it, I get it, but it'll be Christmas Eve, same time, and then the following week is
Christmas morning, or the morning of Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
founders
then,
meeting on the morning of Christmas.
will be founder. What do you call it? New Year's resolutions. And then on January 14th, we're going to have Nick Soman from Decent, and we're going to be talking about founder grit and resilience. He has a pretty crazy story. He was actually had a parasitic illness and was paralyzed and didn't know if he'd ever walk again. And since then has started like 2 companies. So, you know, you guys have probably heard me say this before, that, you know, you're going to experience, or you likely have already experienced, things in your personal life that's more difficult than you've ever experienced in your company. So if you kind of come at it with that point of view, it's like, you know, why be afraid of your startup or things that'll happen? Because you've already achieved or gone through something way crazier, you know, and just use that as fuel. So that'll be a fun conversation as well. If there's topics that you guys want to discuss or learn or whatever, let me know too, and I'll do my best to find people in those spaces.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for letting me tag along this week.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. It's fun. Curtis, what are some ways people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
I just added everybody on LinkedIn.
Cool.
The DMs of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Which is also connected.
Sorry. I don't really respond to them.
What are you going to sell everybody once they connect?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I'll do a buy one, get one free data center.
Nice.
50% off. Okay, please.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. Yeah, let me know if I can help to any of you guys. And like I said, I'm continuously trying to think about the cohort type of thing. And so if that's interesting to you, or you know other people that would think something like that would be interesting, just do me a favor.